Hello everyone, thanks for joining me on today's 172nd Air Wing video. We've got up for review the delightfully colored Vandy 1 A-18F Super Hornet. This is from the U.S. Navy's VX-9 Test and Evaluation Squadron and represents an achievement almost 20 years in the making, actually quite a bit more than 20 years, but we'll get to that. So first off, I'll talk about why I go into the history of the models that I review here. So what I do on this channel is I speak to the history of the model that is being shown. And the reason is to pay homage to the people who have worked, fought in, flown, maintained, built, engineered, supported. Goodness knows how many folks work on any given fighter jet from any given country. As much as we might think that flying a fighter plane is as simple as just walking up to the aircraft, putting on your gear, getting on the ladder, turning it on, every sortie is a team effort. And that team most of the time doesn't make their way to the front of the silver screen. All we see are the pilots flying and bending the airplane and doing air-to-air jiu-jitsu stuff, which, it's entertaining, it's fun, but it's not the full picture. And to give credit to the people who work behind the scenes to make every fighter jet fly, I do talk about some of the background on the model and the actual airplane's history to shed some light on those stories. For those of you who have seen my channel review on the F-14 to the right over here, you've known that I cover some of the history of the model and its attachment to, at the time, VX-4, and how then Commander Hank Kleeman change of command ceremony when he took over the unit, and how the color scheme was tied into that history. For more on that, definitely go check out the dedicated review I have of this Vandy 1 F-14 over here. I was glad to hear from Hank Kleeman's son, actually. He saw their video review and had some things to share and wrote me to compliment and share some corrections that I put in the video channel as well. So that's why I do this. It's just to give true light to the people who do support these wonderfully cool machines. And as such, I do go into the history of it and then talk about the model and some of the reasons why you may or may not want to add it to your collection. So with the channel details laid out here, let's get into the review in question. So the history of the Vandy 1 color scheme goes back decades, actually. It goes back even before the F-14. Back in the 1960s, 1969 to be specific, Hugh Hefner, owner of Playboy magazine, purchased a private jet. Now that may not seem like a big deal by modern standards, but in the 1960s, flying on an airliner was a big deal. It was so expensive that most normal people could maybe go on one flight if they had saved up their entire lives for the purchase, because of just how expensive it was to do that, which is incidentally why in many of the old school footage that you see of airliners, many of the people are dressed in suits. And if you had spent 3 months' salary on one ticket, you would probably wear a suit to the airport too, right? So back in the day, you didn't see very many people wearing their pajamas to go fly somewhere. And it's a mark of advancement in aviation and economics that the ticket prices have gone down to the point where, in fact, normal people can't afford to fly routinely in pajamas or otherwise. So coming back to the 1960s, 1969 again, Hugh Hefner purchased his private airliner, which was a DC-9 passenger jet that was repainted and converted into a flying hotel / party aircraft. A party bus in the sky, you might call it, which was pretty revolutionary for 1969. Some of the footage, it even had its own on-demand video system, which again today doesn't sound like a major deal. I mean, you can watch a video on your phone on an airplane anytime you wish, right? But back in 1969, watching a movie while you were flying took a lot more doing, and of course Hugh Hefner had the money and the panache to pull it off. So the Vandy 1 color scheme was all black, and it was applied to an F-4J in tribute, partially to Hugh Hefner's ultra cool, ultra suave pillar to bachelor masculinity in the form of that all black Playboy jet. The Playboy organization found out about the little bunny on the tail, and instead of suing the Navy, they provided templates for painting it properly. And in exchange for using the templates, the Playboy organization allowed the VX-4 squadron to use the Playboy bunny insignia on the F-4J. The Playboy bunny is not on the Super Hornet to the left here, and there are reasons why that's the case, which we will get to later in the video, but you can see it here on the back of the F-14. And again, if you want to get a better visual of that, I advise you to go check out my F-14A Vandy 1 review that's earlier up in the channel feed. So coming back to the Super Hornet, the background behind that, the F-4J was the first Vandy 1. The Vandy 1 call sign comes from shorthand for the squadron's name, which I should say the squadron's call sign name, which was Vanderbilt. U.S. Navy squadrons have dedicated call signs. So, for example, the VF-74B Devilers, they have Devil and then the name of the Modex on the airplane. The Modex number, of course, is the number on the front and the nose right here. So 01 would be the number of the airplane, and the call sign, the full call sign of the VX-4 squadron back in the 1960s and early 70s was Vanderbilt. And that's what you would probably say if you were flying, you know, one of the light gray, kind of not as cool painted airplanes. But if you're flying the black one, you know, you would go by Vandy 1, right? And that's Vandy, short for Vanderbilt, and 1 for the number on the nose. Now, after the F-4 was retired from the Navy service in 1987, the F-14 Tomcat, which you see modeled on the right over here, took over the Vandy 1 color scheme. Initially in 1985, it was painted black to again commemorate Hank Kleeman's change of command for the VX-4 squadron. Apparently, and this is info that Hank Kleeman's son sent to me directly after I published the video, the color scheme was only on the F-14 for a limited period of time because the Pacific Regional Admiral Air Boss was not thrilled about his F-14 being painted black. So the color scheme had to be taken off the airplane, but not before they got as many pictures of it as they could. Be that as it may, the color scheme would reappear on a more permanent basis later on, when in the late 1980s, the F-14, a different F-14, took on the Vandy 1 black color scheme and kept that all the way through until the Tomcat's retirement from the U.S. Navy in the early 2000s. While the F-14 was taken off of the fleet with VF-31 marking the final flight of the F-14 in 2006, VX-9 stood down F-14 operations in June of 2004. I should point out something here, that in the early 1980s and before, you had two squadrons. You had VX-5, which was the Navy's test and evaluation squadron for bombing air-to-ground weapons. And then you had VX-4, which specialized in test and evaluation of air-to-air weapons, namely missiles and the like. After the base realignment and closure discussions in the early 90s, the VX-4 and the VX-9, VX-4 and VX-5 were combined into one unified test and evaluation squadron, which led to that unit becoming VX-9. So it's one of those interesting turns of play where the military actually makes a decision that adds up, literally. So with VX-9 now in play, again, the F-14 went away in 2004. And while there were F-18 Super Hornets with the bunny tail, some of them did have the bunny logo, as you see here on the tail, those F-18s had to be repainted into the more muted color schemes. None of them wore the all-black configuration that you see here. And of course, the Playboy logo is a bit politically incorrect. And to be honest, when you have female aviators and radar intercept officers going on in the Navy, you know, you don't want to set a bad tone for those people who are flying the same airplanes and taking the same risks as the guys. So The bunny logo was removed from the F-14 and the F/A-18s and has not reappeared since on the U.S. Navy airplanes, which, given modern political understandings, whether you agree with it or not, that's just the way that that particular cookie is going to crumble going forward. But originally, in the early 2000s, there were plans to make the all-black color scheme available on an F/A-18, and for various reasons that never happened. So 20 years afterwards, we now have that Super Hornet, and HobbyMaster has modeled it here for us in 1/72nd scale. So in 2023, Super Hornet 166673 became the latest member of the Vandy 1 Color Scheme Club. So what does VX-9 do anyways? What's test and evaluation? So what the VX-9 vampires do is they conduct test and evaluation of weapons and related subsystems to validate that they work as intended. Somebody has to make sure that the air-to-air missiles, which you can see here clearly on the left wing as well as the right wing of the F/A-18 model here, are working within the parameters that the requirements specify, and the sensors work as specified for, in this case, air-to-air and underground roles. And that's what VX-9 does. And it's an important job. It's not one that's necessarily going to get you front page billing on a Top Gun sequel, but it is a crucial job. And their airplanes are used to equip and test various weapons. So for this particular release, I'm glad to share that you can display this F/A-18 with air-to-air or air-to-ground weapons, and it's completely appropriate. Depending on the year that you're working with and the F-14, that model that you have, that may or may not be true. So let's get into the models, talk about some of the pros and cons of this, as I usually do. We'll talk about the positives here. The color scheme is basically bang on. It's all black, all gloss, and all freaking beautiful. I don't even have to belabor the point. You can just go right back to the intro footage and just see just how cool this thing is. It is a gorgeous airplane. I think the Super Hornet just looks good in general, but in all black and all gloss, it looks really nice. I'm curious what you all think. Those of you that are Super Hornet fans, and some of you who may not be actually, do you prefer the VX-9 Vandy 1 color scheme here? Or do you prefer, if you had to choose one Super Hornet and one color, and that color was between this Vandy 1 all black and the Blue Angels blue and yellow, which one would you opt for? I'm curious. Let me know what you all think in the comments. Tell me if you would prefer the Blue Angels color or if you would like the all black Vandy 1. Me, I am a sucker for a quote-unquote murdered out jet. So put me in the Vandy 1 camp, but no disrespect to the Blue Angels folks, because those people don't know how to fly, and I can understand why some folks might prefer that too. So again, tell me what you all think in the comments on that. Another pro, the small labels for the crew names as well as some of the warning insignia are done cleanly and crisply. You can make out the details of the labels, such as the Air Boss name on the aft right side or starboard side of the jet, as well as the unit commanding officer and some of the other small labels. Also some of the warning labels that are in red, especially the warning label that's between the rudders and the tail and the back here, which you can see in the intro footage. It's also done very cleanly. The VX-9 Vampires insignia is not washed out or weird. The stars and the blue labels are straight and applied well. So again, it's really nicely done in terms of the small colors and the small labels. The accessories are very comprehensive. They match pretty much what you would expect to see on a Super Hornet. So I'm glad to share that you can equip it with air-to-air or air-to-ground weapons however you see fit. And again, it's a test and evaluation airplane. So if you get the loaded version that has all of the weapons in the box, you can display it with any combination of air-to-ground weapons, fuel tanks, missiles, and it is completely valid within the mission of the airplane. One of the reasons I point that out is that a lot of models, you open the box and you get a kit of accessories that go on it, and they're either accessories that aren't correct for the age of the airplane, like some F-14s. The latest VF-74 Aggressor from HobbyMaster is a good example of this, because it has the lantern pod and air-to-ground bombs on it. But guess what? VF-74 was disestablished 2 years before the first air-to-ground lantern was equipped to the fleet in the mid-90s, I think 1996, if memory serves. So correct me in the comments if I get the name wrong, but bottom line is, on that release, even though it has the lantern pod and the air-to-ground weapons, it would have been anachronistic for VF-74 to have that because none of that was available when they were flying the aggressor mission in the early to mid-90s. So there's an example of a release that looks good, has decent weapons with it, but the weapons don't match the mission of the airplane at the time the model was produced. Whereas with the VX-9 Super Hornet here, the accessories are consistent with what you would expect on a Super Hornet of the test and evaluation unit. The other good thing about it is the gloss finish is done consistently, so even the intakes in the interior of the engine intakes are done with really nicely. So you have like the inside of the engine intakes there. You've got the gloss paint applied to the interior as well as the bottom. So the fuel tanks also are gloss finish, which is amazing, and the pylons are correctly finished in gray as they should be. So again, great accuracy on HobbyMaster's part, well done on there, and to make the model, look as good as it does, which is something I don't always get to share about HobbyMaster's productions or any manufacturers. So when I can, it's a great opportunity to share some positive developments there. Do note that because it is a gloss model, unlike the matte finish of this particular Vandy 1F14, if you handle the Super Hornet to your left over here, there will be some, you might get some fingerprints on it. Just bear that in mind if you're someone that's particular about that. I'm not worried about it, but if you handle the model and you put a few like accessories on it and you want to display it, you will get a couple of fingerprints on the thing in the process. So again, it's black, so it's not terribly noticeable, but it is something to bear in mind. Now we can pivot to the cons. So the first con is going to be availability, and I'll just say this at the beginning. This video is being published at around late winter, early spring 2024. So at this point, you can still get these for relatively attainable prices. Right now, they're going for about 130, 140 US dollars. But yeah, I wouldn't, if you're watching this in close proximity to the time I'm publishing it, I would not wait to get these because there's really two things to that. It's a con because this is a very cool looking airplane, and whether you get either version, the version with the weapons or the one without the weapons, either way, you're going to be hurting to get this if you wait much past the time this video is produced, because I can see this one selling out very quickly. And as with any other release, once the initial batch of models are sold out of the retail stores, then you're at the mercy of eBay and the secondary market. And for something like this, it is going to be a very expensive airplane to get, I think, after they sell out of the stores. So the con is, if you're somebody that really wants this, you pretty much got to make some moves and get it now. And if that means you have to sell maybe a less popular model in your collection and then put it on a list to go buy it later because it'll be relatively less popular, that might be an approach to take, because this one, it's beauty, and I can see it selling out pretty quick. So don't wait. If you're watching this much after, again, late winter, early spring 2024, then I feel for your position, because if you try to shop for these afterward and they're sold out of the retail stores, you're going to be paying a very pretty penny to get them. Right now, the F-14s are still relatively available because Century Wings produced this release, this Vandy one over here. But when the Vandy 1 Tomcats sell out, yeah, I remember a few years back looking at the Century Wings one, the one before this, which was of a later Vandy 1 release, and yeah, it was pushing $200. So I don't foresee that the Super Hornet is going to be much less once it's all said and done and they sell out of the stores. So if you're watching this in proximity to late winter, early spring 2024, don't wait. Get it now. And if you have an F-14 already, any of the Vandy 1 releases from Century Wings, Caliber Wings, or HobbyMaster, why are you watching this video? Just hit the stop button here, Maybe leave a like and a comment first before hitting the stop button. But either way, just get to the point, stop this video, get your credit card, go buy this. I mean, if you already have the F-14, there is no hesitation or debate about getting the Super Hornet to go with it. The two of them, well, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. If looking at these together in this shot is not enough to convince you to get the FA-18, either the clean version or this one with the weapons, as a compliment to your Vandy 1 F-14, there's nothing I can say to sell it. I mean, here it is. Take it or leave it, right? So, as one character said in a certain action movie in the 90s, some things sell themselves. So, again, take that for what it's worth. Another con that I'll make of the FA-18, I almost said F-14 there for a sec, is the slime lights. So the quote-unquote slime lights are fighter pilot talk for the formation lights, one of which you can see here on the nose. There is another one on the other side, and then there is a formation light on the back, in the back aft section of the airplane. And what those are for are to assist when flying formation in bad weather. So that way the wingman can look at the leader airplane and keep sight, even if there's clouds, haze, fog, that sort of thing. On the actual airplane, if you notice in the introduction shots, the slime lights are white. They are just as white as the number 1 for Vandy 1 insignia on the nose for the Modex. They're not on the model. It's slightly green, which is what they look like on most airplanes. They're not that way on the Vandy 1 Super Hornet in real life. So it is a shade different. I think there was some discussion on the forums about fixing that, and that sounds like, based on the fact that we're looking at this model right now, that message didn't quite make it to the factory before they shipped. But that's not a major deal. As far as flaws go, it's not even a big one. But it is something to note if you are somebody that is interested in trying to see if maybe that's green or white or what have you in some of the intro shots or the videos or photos that you see of the model online. The last thing, and this is a nitpicky thing, but it is something I'll point out because this is an issue for the Super Hornet as well as the F4 Phantom 2s from HobbyMaster. The very front of the Super Hornet has a little silver end cap on the radome. If you go back to the intro footage, you can see it on some of those aircraft. And so the front of it has this, again, has the silver section there. And that section is done, like, I think it's just an end cap for the radome. And it's not modeled on the HobbyMaster FA-18s out of the box. You have to take some silver paint or titanium paint, just put a little daub on the end of a, I almost lost the word there, end of a paintbrush, and then just put the paintbrush very gently on the end of the nose, just do a little bop, and that's it. It's a very small thing, and hopefully HobbyMaster can put that into production on their Super Hornets in the future, but it's not included on this release, which was the case for the FA-18 in Blue Angels colors that I did a review on last year as well. So hopefully we see that enhancement as a change in future releases, just like HobbyMaster updated the anti-collision lights under the wing. You can see one here that's green, and on the other side there is a red one. That was something that I saw HobbyMaster put on the FA-18F from the Top Gun release. Before then, the Super Hornets did not have that. So hopefully we can see some changes there, and then going forward, HobbyMaster can put the little piece of silver paint there and correctly model the radome. And that's also true of the F4s as well. So on the snub nose, non-gun equipped F4C, F4B, and F4D models, the radome also has a silver end cap on it, and those are also not modeled out of the box by HobbyMaster. So just something to bear in mind, and it's a quick fix. Like if you take some silver or titanium paint, again, small paintbrush, put it on the end of the nose, done. It's very small. So as long as you don't get crazy with the paintbrush, it's not something you'll likely screw up. And it's such a small detail that, again, if you want to sell the model, I don't think anyone's going to ding you for not being 100% out of the box for that. And it's a small detail that really brings the model home in terms of overall finish and completeness. So all things considered, as far as whether you should acquire this for your collection or not, I say go for it. And I am biased a little bit because, you know, I paid my own money for this, which means if you're watching a video review of my models, it's because it's something I bought, not because I got it from a store or some kind of third-party review or marketing deal. Not to say that's a bad thing for some other channels, but this means when you hear me talk about a model, it's from the perspective of somebody who paid their own money. So I think if you are someone who already has one of these very beautiful black F-14s on the right over here, again, this video ended for you about 10 minutes ago. Just get it. Just get the Super Hornet, either one, and just make it happen, because this pairing is this is awesome. When I get my final setup for a display case, these two will be parked next to each other, and it is going to be a very glorious day in the 1/72nd scale display world. But until then, you know, right now I'm trying to sort out where I want to display stuff and what kind of rotation I have. So they may still come out on a temporary basis throughout the year. I still have to sit down and really figure out how many I have, what rotation I want to do, and that kind of thing. So I don't have enough storage space here to display all of my models at once, and to do that accurately anyway, I would need like a dedicated space, like a hobby room, to do it, which may happen in the coming years, but for right now, I don't have that yet. So anyways, point is, if you already have the F-14, any Vandy 1 black F-14, get the Super Hornet and call it done. If you don't have a Vandy 1 F-14, and you're interested in the Super Hornet as a standalone addition to your collection, I think it's still worthwhile, especially if you get the one with the weapons, because then you can display it however you want. And while you don't necessarily need the F-14 to complement the Super Hornet, I think right now, with the Century Wings F-14 still available at relatively reasonable prices, you can, I would say right now is a pretty good time to get both of these for less than $300 out the door. And that's a big deal, considering if you wait until these things hit the secondary market, you're probably going to be looking at spending that much for just one. So with that, thank you for watching my video. If you like this review, consider looking at some other ones. I've got so many reviews up now that I'm sure I've got at least one airplane that you would be interested in hearing more about. Just like I talked about the history of this release, I do that for some of my other reviews as well. So check out my other videos on the channel, and if you like what you see, including this video, consider subscribing. That way you'll know, if you click the bell icon, when I upload a new video, and that tells me in the great big YouTube algorithm in the sky that you like my content and I'm doing a good job. So thank you all for watching. Those of you who have subscribed, my sincere thank you, and we will see you all in the next video.